I'd like to talk to you about coding outside-in. I like to live code using an approach that's called outside-in test-driven development. I first heard about this at a meetup here in Zurich, actually. When Sandro Mancuso came here, he mentioned different forms of TDD, and one of them was this outside-in TDD. And I was curious about it, and I wanted to try it. I tried it at HomeGate, actually. I did a task this way, and I'd like to do one tonight to show you what it is about. So just to be on the same page, what is TDD? Test-driven development is a technique that we use to increase the quality of our code, and we write the tests first before the feature. And typically, it's described with a red, green, and refactor cycle. So first you write a failing test, red. Then you make it pass, green, and then you improve your code. That's called the refactor, right? And what is outside-in TDD? Basically, it's the same thing, but first you write an acceptance test. An acceptance test is a test that basically tells you my feature works as specified. And this is the first test you write. And then you go into the normal TDD cycles for your unit, the smaller features, right? Your subcomponents that create your big feature. And when you are done, basically, with that cycle, the last test to pass will be your acceptance test. So let's try it, right? So I'll write something very simple because we don't have a lot of time. I have a calculator class, and I'd like this calculator class to have a method that is called stats, right? And this method, it returns useful stats, okay? And basically, we expect that our calculator.stats to equal, and we get an object that will give us some numbers, minimum, maximum, and sum. Okay, so let's instantiate this calculator. So calculator equals new calculator, and I pass in an array of numbers. So this, okay. So my minimum will be 9, right? Maximum will be 89, and the sum, well, let's see. Yeah, if somebody's faster, 167, okay? So 167, right? And this is already a test for my feature. So let's run it and see that it fails. So basically we see, okay, the test fails because it says stats is not a function. Of course, I didn't write it, so the function is not there. But I already have my test for this. And this is my acceptance test, okay? So let's look at this class. It's an empty class, okay? So we'll start with a constructor. We take the values and we just save them, okay? So it's my array of numbers. And I can start writing the stats function, which will return an object with some stuff in it, okay? So if I check, my test is still failing, but it's failing for a different reason now. It says I received an empty object instead of receiving what I expect. Can you see it? Yes. Okay. Okay, so let's start implementing the actual feature. And we will start with the minimum, right? And basically, it calculates the minimum, right? And we expect calculator.min to equal 9, right? So we have our test, and we see, okay, now I have 2 tests failing. So if I go to the end, I see 2 tests failed, and one of them is the minimum because the minimum function does not exist yet. So I'll implement my function now, see how I'm doing the test first, and then I implement the function. So I will use the library that we have, math.min, and I pass in the values, okay? And this will already make my test green. See, calculates the minimum is green, and we still have the other one that is failing. So I can actually start adding minimum here, right? And our first part is done. So let's go on. Let's do the same thing for max, right? I will just copy paste. Oops. Okay, this here, this here. So max calculates the maximum, yeah. So the function is max, and it equals 89, we said, right? Okay. And we'll see now that one test is still passing, two are failing. I will add my max function, and is the same basically as the other one. All right, I save and sorry, yeah. There you go. Two passed. Okay, so I can add this stuff back here. All right, and I still have one test failing. So the last function is describe sum, right? And it calculates the sum, and I will say expect calculator dot sum to equal 165, was it? 67. Oh, you're listening. Cool. Okay, so I have two failing tests and two passing tests. So let's implement the last function, sum, and we will return this dot values dot reduce because we like functional programming, right? And we sum the two values together. And I have three tests passing, and the last one that is failing is still my acceptance test. Now, if I add this here, what will happen? Everything passes. So, well, it's Christmas after all. So let's go back here. Well, about me, full stack developer at HomeGate. My name is Stefan, by the way. And yeah, here's are my contacts. And if you have questions later, you can ask me. What I like a lot about this approach is that it tells you when you're done, right? If you are able to write an acceptance test, you already know what your final feature will work like, more or less. It can also work with UI components or other kinds of stuff. It's very helpful because, yeah, you really have something that tells you, hey, you're done. And yeah, cool.